Hello world, welcome to episode 117 of the Jimmy Canz Show. It is a classic supercard retrospective. It is WrestleWar 91, WCW WrestleWar 91, that is. Yes, we are in the era of WCW. So let us talk about this one. As I said, it was a WCW event held on February 24th, 1991 from the Arizona Veteran Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, Arizona. Attendance 6,800, 50% capacity. Broadcast live on pay-per-view, later released on VHS, courtesy of Turner Home Entertainment. Action calls by Jim Ross, and a returning American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Yes, last month he was wrestling the Rumble. This month he's calling the action WCW. So 10 matches on this card. Let's get into it, shall we? Opening contest is for the newly created WCW Six-Man Tag Team Championships. The champions are the team of Ricky Morton, the Junkyard Dog, and Wildfire Tommy Rich. They are facing the challengers, consisting of the Big Cat and the State Patrol. This title was such a joke. It was such an afterthought, or a non-thought, really. I mean, your inaugural champions, and Orton, Rich, and Dog were crowned at a house show, for crying out loud. And then the first big title defense on pay-per-view was against a thrown together trio, consisting of, 2/3 of it is a jobber tag team. So, no real big surprise which way this one goes, with the champions retaining, but does it really even matter? Next up, Candyman Brad Armstrong taking on a newly single competitor, Beautiful Bobby Eaton. So yes, this kind of launched Eaton's solo career, and even though he was the quote-unquote heel in this, huge reactions from the crowd in this one, especially considering how much the crowd liked Armstrong. Just in general, the fact that they were so behind Eaton in this one, which was very, as a young child, I can remember it was kind of jarring, to like, why are they so behind Bobby Eaton? But in hindsight, looking at it now as an adult, I know why. I mean, Eaton was a phenomenal talent. So, but as a kid, it was a little weird. Obviously, like I said, this is kind of the match that they were learning to use to help springboard Eaton into a solo career. So Eaton does end up picking up the win in this one. Not a real big surprise there, given the situation. Next up, tag contest, the team of Miki Handa and Miss A taking on Itsuki Yamazaki and Mami Katamura. This is, WCW in early 1991. No offense to these four women, but I mean, let's be honest, there wasn't a single person probably in that crowd that had any idea who these four women were or cared about this match in any way, shape, or form. The only woman that some people might know would be Yamazaki, as she was one half of the Jumping Bomb Angels in WWF. A few years earlier, as former WWF Women's Tag Champ. But other than that, it's just kind of, I don't understand why this match was on the card, to be honest with you. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. I know that they're getting ready for, some cross promotion with New Japan, but I mean, why not bring some of the male competitors over? I mean, you don't even have a women's division in WCW, really. So, like I said, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Does it really matter who wins this one? I don't know. Yamazaki and Kitamura did pick up the win, but whatever. Next up, the Natural Dustin Rhodes taking on Nature Boy Buddy Landell. Yes, along with Dusty, his son Dustin followed suit, headed on over to WCW. This is his first WCW pay-per-view matchup. Only goes about 6.5 minutes. It was really just a vehicle to help kind of launch Justin's career in WCW. Landell bumped his butt off for him, made the kid look really good. You can see the kid does have some chops, does have a future in him. Rhodes did pick up the win, like I said, in about 6.5 minutes with the running bulldog. Next up, the newly christened Young Pistols, Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong taking on the team of the Royal Family, Rip Morgan, Jack Victory. Yes, they've rebranded Smothers and Armstrong. They are now the Young Pistols. It goes about 12 minutes. No real big surprise here. Pistols get the win. This is their rebranding kind of thing, and the Royal Family have always been just kind of the enhancement jobber team. So there you have that. Z-Man taking on the computerized man of the 1990s, Terrence Taylor, with Alexandra York in his corner, representing the York Foundation. There's been a lot of back and forth between these two in the weeks leading up to this event. Every match kind of ending in a DQ. Thus, this match has a no disqualification stipulation added to it. So, obviously, usually when those types of things happen, favors the heel. So, yes, Taylor does pick up the win in this one through some chicanery. Next up, Stan the Lariat Hansen taking on Big Van Vader. This is a match very familiar with those that are fans of Japanese wrestling. This is a first for Western audiences with these two guys just beating the ever-loving tar out of each other. Dare say this was probably the most physical match of the evening, and that is saying something considering that there's a War Games match coming up. But it's Van Vader and Stan Hansen. How could it not be physical? As physical as this one was, at least everybody's eyes stayed in their sockets in this one. If you know anything about wrestling history, just look up Stan Hansen and Van Vader, and you'll understand what I'm referencing there. I'm not going to get into it right now. But much like their contest in Japan going to a double disqualification, so does this one. So nothing's really settled here, except these guys just spend a lot of time beating the crap out of each other. Next up for the WCW United States Championship, total package, Lex Luger defending against Dangerous Dan Spivey. We saw in the Clash retrospective that I did, the last retrospective I did was the Clash one, Spivey attacking Luger there to help generate some heat in the ensuing matchup here. Didn't really do anything for me, to be honest with you. I don't think it did anything for much for anybody. Like I said, this is not a good match in any stretch of the. It was very predictable who was going to win here. There was no juice behind Spivey to put a title on him. Would have made no sense, and it's not what happened. Luger does retain. What this really helped do was set up the next thing. As post-match, Luger was supposed to be presented with a new WCW United States Championship title, as they were still using the NWA title, and now they've kind of broken away from the NWA. They're starting to get their own title belt. So it was supposed to be presented, this title, by the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff, and Grizzly Smith. After handing him said title, Koloff then attacks Luger and beats him down. This is done twofold. One, obviously, it's done to set up the return of Koloff and a feud between Luger and Koloff, and also the title that he presented him wasn't actually the new WCW United States Championship. It wasn't done yet. with the stand-in belt. So they kind of used this to make sure that the quote unquote new title wasn't really seen clearly on camera because it wasn't ready yet. So there's still a couple of about a week or so away from being finished. So there you have that. We said Luger retains, sets up this next feud. Next up for the WCW World Tag Team Championship, the Team of Doom, X Butcher Reed, Ron Simmons, Teddy Long, taking on the Fabulous Freebirds, Michael P.S. Hayes, Jimmy Jim Garvin, who not only have Big Daddy Dink with them now, but also Diamond Dallas Page representing them. This is what has become known as the negative title reign. So let me explain here. Obviously, when I'm saying negative title reign, so the Birds do defeat Doom on the pay-per-view. However, the Freebirds has actually already lost the World Tag Team titles to the Steiner Brothers 7 days earlier at a TV taping. I believe that it was going to air like in March 9th or so, but it was actually recorded 7 days before this event. So they've actually lost the titles before they ever won them. So it's a negative 7 day reign, technically speaking. So it's just kind of funny. So yeah, the Freebirds are your quote unquote new tag team champions. So, and then last but not least, our War Games contest. The team of Sting, Flying Brian Pillman, and the WCW United States Tag Team Champions, Rick and Scott Steiner, the Steiner brothers, taking on the Four Horsemen and the living legend Larry Zbyszko. So let me explain here. They're taking on three of the Four Horsemen as Arn was legitimately injured a little bit before this event, so he wasn't able to compete in the War Games match. He did accompany the Horsemen out to, said ring for moral support and what have you, but, did not actually participate in the match itself. So, Sid, Flair, Wyndham, and Zbyszko representing their side. The end comes in this one when Sid, is repeatedly powerbombing Pillman, who he legitimately almost, really crippled as, the WCW War Games cage, did have the top on it and it wasn't a very high cage. So when Sid went to do said powerbomb, there wasn't really clearance for Pillman's legs to come around. So Pillman's legs hit the top of the cage. So he doesn't really get the rotation he needs and, basically comes down right on the back of his head. And then Sid proceeds, to try to do it again, realizing, really can't do a powerbomb in this environment, but, it's what they wrote in and everything. So, he's repeatedly powerbombing Pillman. He's legitimately loopy here. Elegante comes down, gets in the ring, stands over Pillman, basically to prevent Sid from continuing to hurt his friend, and calls for the match. Basically, Elegante basically gives up on behalf of the Steiners, Pillman, and Sting. So the team of the Horsemen and Zbyszko win. This doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense to me. How can somebody not involved in the matchup, give up for the team? He wasn't, but I'll get into that in a minute. So, all in all, this is just not a good show. We're looking at almost every match had a predictable finish, with the exception of the Japanese women tag match. The only reason that wasn't a predictable finish, I guess, is because nobody knew anything about any of the competitors in the match. So they didn't, know which way it was going to go, but quite frankly, nobody really cared which way it was going to go. And the War Games match, probably weren't 100% sure which way that was going to go, but it was just an odd finish. The World Tag Title change didn't make any real sense. When you turned around and you changed it again before the event even actually took place. There's just a lot of things that could have been done differently here. Maybe you have, if you wanted that kind of finish to the War Games where Elegante quits, not because, obviously he wasn't even in the match, but because his friend's hurt, so he quits on behalf of his friend. Like, we should have had him in the match. Maybe, why not have the Steiners taking on Doom directly to win the titles? Put Elegante in the War Games match, and I don't know, maybe put him in there with Dustin Rhodes, or even though he competed earlier in the night, maybe you put him in there with Eaton. You're trying to get him over as a singles competitor. Maybe you had somebody else slated into it, and you can write some type of injury angle, and Eaton's a late substitute the same way that Zbyszko was. So there's ways you could have done that to have actually Elegante in the match, and then and you still could have done the same type of finish with the, power bombing Pillman and Elegante quitting on behalf, so Pillman doesn't get hurt anymore. But it makes sense that way. The way it didn't make any sense. This is just, like I said, every other match was a predictable finish. Like I said, you had a 6-man match where, 2/3 of one team was an enhancement tag team. Obviously, you're not going to put the titles on them. I don't know. It's just bad booking, bad storytelling. It's just, like I said, the only thing that really worked in this whole show was the post-match after the U.S. title thing to help set up, some stuff between Luger and Koloff. Other than that, the rest of the show is garbage. So on my 10-belt scale, I'm going to give this a 2. 2 out of 10. Using the WCW 6-man tag titles in my graphics here because this is the only set of titles right now that actually are WCW titles. We're in the process of getting those new title belts, but these are the first ones. And there you have it. So it's a 2 out of 10. Not a good show. So next up in the classic Supercard retrospective, speaking of not really good shows, we'll talk about WrestleMania 7. So wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. Give the channel a like, share, subscribe. Take care of one another. I'll see you all when I see you.